Hello, this is Michael. Welcome back to learning to program using the Godot game engine. In this video, we're going to look at the Godot interface. We're going to take a quick tour. So I'm going to click on my project we made last time. This is a fresh, brand new project. We're going to hit Edit and open it up, and we're going to take a look at this interface here. So let's walk through this. So over here on the left, I've got the file system, and this consists of a list of folders up here and files down here that are within the selected folder that you've got. So here I'm going to make a couple of folders. I'm going to call one Art, and I'm right clicking and hitting New Folder. I'm going to call another one Sounds, and you notice up here I've got my new folders that I've created, and I can click them and quickly go to that folder. You can also navigate it down here using these. But this is a quick access up here. Alright, and over here we've got the scene view, and the scene view describes all the objects that are in my current scene. And so let's take a quick look at this. This is a tree structure, which is very much like your file window. So I've got my files and directories on my computer, and within those I may have more files and more directories with files underneath them. And Godot works the same way. So I've got a node up here at the top, which may be my root node, and then off from that I have branches, and then off from those I can have leaves. Right? And you can tell that they are a child of the parent above it because of this little arrow, and I can click it and it'll roll up all of its children underneath it. And you can also move them around. So if I wanted to move this leaf from this branch to this branch, I can drag and hold it and then drop it right there, and right here I just made it a child of root and not a branch. So I can drag it and drop it right on top of branch there, and now it's a child of this branch instead of this branch. So if you make a mistake by adding a node to the wrong node, you can move them around like that. And then we'll look at the inspector. So the inspector, based on which type of node you've got selected, you've got all sorts of properties that you can change about them. So these properties are things like the position in the scene, the scale, how big they are. You can also change the color and various things like that. If you have a button, you can change the text of the button. All kinds of stuff. We'll look at that later. So here under node, there's a little tab here. On the node tab, you've got two things. You've got groups, which is another tab. We'll look at this later, but it's a way to kind of identify a node as as being part of a group so that you can access it quickly later. But there's also signals, and signals are very important. These are how we handle events within Godot. So event is something like a button click or a mouse click or two objects colliding together, and all those things create events, and we use signals in order to attach those things in code and handle those things in code. Alright, so then down here we've got a couple of context windows. So we've got our output window. So here, when you're running your game, you can see output here of things that are happening within the game, and you have control of being able to write to this as the programmer, and this won't be visible when a person is actually playing your game, but it's very helpful for debugging. You've got the debugger, which allows you to look at variables. You can pause your game in the middle and see kind of what's happening inside the game as it's playing. There's also audio and animation editors, and these are resource editors that we'll look at later on down the line. But if you need to close this, you just click on the one that's highlighted blue, and it'll drop down like that. Up here at the top, we've got our Workspace Changer, and it changes which type of workspace we're working with. So here the script is your code, and that's the code that we'll be writing. There's the 3D view, which you can see looks very three-dimensional, and I've got 2D view, which is also two-dimensional, or which is two-dimensional. There's also asset library, and so the asset library is a collection of things that people have made and put on the internet for you to download that can help you with your project. And so these are like plugins that you can add on. We may look at some of those later, but for now you don't have to worry too much about those. Up here at the top right is your debug buttons. So here this plays your game. So if I just play this, well, it's going to ask me if I need a default scene, so I'll just save this scene and select it. And I just get a blank gray window, but that's my game running. And didn't leave it up, but there's also a pause button, so you can pause your game while it's running. And now if I had anything happening, it would freeze. And then also there's the stop button, which will close your games. And then there's two other buttons. There's play scene and play custom scene. So what this is if I had a game and I had like a splash screen and I had a main menu and then a bunch of levels, and I want to test say level 35, and I'm currently editing level 35, I can hit this one and it'll just run that level 35 instead of having to go all the way through all those steps to get to that level. You can also play custom scene, and it'll ask you to pick that scene and load it directly there. Alright, and then over here on the left we've got this menu, and I've got scene, which allows me to work with my current scene so I can save it and load new ones and convert them into some resources that we'll look at later. You can also undo and redo from here, which is hotkey Control Z to undo. So if I move something, let me put an icon on there, and if I move it and I go, oh, I didn't want to do that, I can hit the buttons Control Z and it'll undo that last movement. Alright, then I've got project. So this has to do with my project as a whole. So there's things like this project settings specifically, and here I can change all sorts of things about my how my game will run. And so I can change some of the physics, how the physics runs, how the graphics work. I can change the rendering quality, and I can change the scene that runs on the startup, all kinds of stuff here. There's the input map, so these are your action. You can map an action to a key or joystick button, all those types of things. Localization is if you have translations, so if you had multiple languages you could switch between them by selecting a different localization. Auto load, we'll look at these later. These allow you to have code that runs all the time, even between switching scenes or levels. And that, so if you had a character and he perhaps got an upgrade of getting a hat, and then if you move from one scene to another, he may lose that hat, and so you could store that he had that hat upgrade in an auto load. It's also plugins, and those are usually used by that asset library that we looked at before. That allows you to add things like a terrain editor, things like that. And GD Native is being able to plug in the C++ language into Godot, and we probably won't look at that too much, but it is an option that is available. Alright, I think that pretty much covers it. Thank you, and we'll see you for the next video.